Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, the show that explores the intersection of technology, business and everyday life. So I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today I'm going to be joined by Sam Flynn, a digital wellbeing coach. And she's going to be discussing the impact that smartphones and the digital world can have on our focus, attention, time, sleep, mental health and creativity. And I want to hear her story and how, with over 12 years' experience as a social media training, Sam saw firsthand the positive and the negative effects that these platforms can have. And having overcome her own addiction to her smartphone, she's now passionate about helping others use the digital world consciously and effectively. And I think the words in today's episode will resonate with every single person listening, and I include myself in that, because Sam will share practical steps that we can all take to reduce the negative impact of technology in our life, such as turning off things like notifications and blocking time-stealing apps. And additionally, with her background in business psychology, she'll also discuss how teams can manage their relationship with technology to improve productivity. So whether you're looking to improve your digital well-being or seeking tips of managing your tech habits, this is a must-listen episode. So buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you're listening in the world, it's time for me to beam your ears all the way to Manchester here in England, where Sam is waiting to share her story.
So a massive warm welcome to the show, Sam. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you so much for having me. So I am a digital wellbeing coach, trainer and speaker, but I also am a social media trainer. For the last 12 years, that's been my main business. And I'm emerging into the digital wellbeing world, having been immersed in the other side of it for so long and helping people use social media. Now I'm kind of helping them manage their relationship with it.
Love it. And digital wellbeing coach, got to be the coolest title in the world. But I'd love to take you back in time. Can you share with me how you recognise the negative impacts of smartphones and digital platforms, maybe in your own life, and what motivated you to take action?
Yeah, it was definitely my own experiences that really led me into the role I'm in now. I mean, I've been immersed in the digital world for well over 12 years now, and it's offered me a career, so I can't slate it for that reason. But it was definitely during the pandemic, really. I was trying to keep my business going, as everyone who was running their businesses were. And my husband was one of the lucky ones who got to leave the house every day because he works in construction. So I was home all day on my own with my 3 young children. They were 18 months, 4 and 6 when the pandemic hit. Feels a long time ago now, but yeah, it's almost like yesterday, doesn't it? So yeah, because of their ages, I found actually it was a lot easier to work from my phone. I could sit and watch Peppa Pig or pretend to be watching Peppa Pig while being on my phone. I could be putting them to bed and be working on my phone. So it was like my phone became a really, really useful tool for me in that. But slowly I found that it was permanently in my hand. And actually it was when my middle daughter said to me, "Mum, you're always on your phone. You're not listening to me," that it really shone a massive headlamp in my face and just made me realise how bad it had got for me. And alongside that, as with many people during the pandemic, I'd found my mental health really declining, was just struggling to get up every day, feeling really unhappy. And so I decided to take the drastic action of deleting everything off my phone and just taking a month off work, a month off having any kind of connection with the digital world, other than, WhatsApp and text messages and that kind of thing. And funnily enough, my mental health improved. And it just really started me thinking more on an interest point of view, to be honest. My background's in business psychology. So I think it just sparked the psychologist head in me to think, why are we like this? Because I know I'm not the only one. Why are we addicted to our phones? Why are we so plugged in digitally all the time, and what is it doing to us? So yeah, I read lots and lots of books on the topic, and it just became more of a passion than anything, and something I started to talk to other people about. And one day I just thought, this is something I could actually really help people with, and maybe there's not enough people out there discussing this and raising these issues.
Yeah, and I think that story you just shared there, I think it will resonate with so many people listening all around the world. And I think we've all been in restaurants where we've, as a couple, maybe spent the whole year saving to go on holiday and spend quality time together, and then you look around and there's people sat opposite each other just scrolling on their phones.
It's a really common sight now, isn't it? It's a really common sight, unfortunately, that people are struggling now to engage person in person because they're so used to being digitally plugged in.
And I'm curious, in your experience there as a social media trainer for over 12 years, can you share some of the insights on the significant changes that you've seen in the way people interact with technology, and also how it's impacting their lives, both positively and negatively? Because there is two sides to this story, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first started delivering social media training, I think iPhones were just sort of emerging, but the only real smartphone anyone had was a BlackBerry. Yeah. And so most social media was done on desktop. And I think that's been probably one of the most significant changes, because now around 90% of social media use is through smartphones. So I think the rise of the smartphone has definitely shifted our relationship with social media, because we don't just shut off our desktop and leave social media behind. It follows us everywhere. It leaves the house with us. It goes to bed with us. It's with us all the time. So I think that's definitely been one of the biggest shifts. And then the platforms themselves have worked really hard to make us addictive, sadly. So I remember when I first joined Facebook 19 years ago now, which sounds insane that, I've been on Facebook for 19 years. But again, it was all desktop only. And you would look through your feed, and then you'd have to click to go onto page 2 and then click to go onto page 3 of your feed, where of course now it's the infinite feed. It never ends. And so this is something that means there's not a friction point for people to go, oh, hang on, actually I've got stuff to get on with, because it doesn't stop. So that's definitely caused issues as well. And then I think obviously just the growth in it in general too, compared to when I started delivering social media training, for example, there were only a few businesses really starting to embrace social media as a form of marketing. Whereas now every business is on there, majority of people are using some form of social media. So the volume of content has obviously dramatically increased, to the point that people have this fear that if they're not plugged in, they're missing out on something. So I think, the platforms themselves, the way they've changed, the algorithms as well, so delivering more content of interest to us rather than just delivering it in chronological order, has meant that we've become a lot more plugged in, and we don't have those friction points to just switch off and say, right, that's it. I've caught up to where I was yesterday, or actually I've got stuff to do and get on with. There's not an end. And I think that's what a lot of people I'm seeing now are really struggling with, that they've got to themselves try and make that decision to stop, as opposed to the app saying, right, you're all caught up. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest differences. And I can't slate social media. It's offered me a career for so long, and I still am on social media. I still promote my business through social media, and I think that's a real positive. And there's obviously the positive interactions that people do get from it, but I think it is really important that we all think about that we are using it in a conscious way rather than being pulled into the addiction.
Yeah, and I think addiction is a great word there, and it's important to highlight, I think, for anybody listening, maybe beating themselves up over an addiction like this, is they were designed with the same mechanics as fruit machines and that dopamine-driven feedback loops. And we often forget that the companies design these things to keep us scrolling, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they're completely designed to be addictive. It's to keep us on there, because the more we're on there, the more they can learn about us, the more they can deliver ads to us that are applicable, and the more likely we are to click on them and they make money. So it's very much, they are designed as addictive tools, and the platforms themselves right now, we're not going to do anything to change that. So absolutely, you're right. We shouldn't hold any guilt in that. And the other issue is, of course, that they follow us around. It's not like cigarettes, for example. You decide one day, right, that's it, I'm done, I'm going to quit smoking. If you had a packet of cigarettes in your pocket every day while you've decided not to smoke, it's going to make it a million times harder. And of course, social media it's everywhere with us now.
And you did mention a few moments ago there that the key to mitigating the negative impacts of the digital world is using it consciously. So can you elaborate on what that means, and maybe provide a few examples of a more conscious digital use?
Yeah, so consciously means that you are opening up the platform, knowing what your intention is in going on that platform. So you're not doing it to procrastinate. You're not doing it unconsciously where you suddenly find the phone in your hand. And it is a practice, as many wellbeing exercises are a practice, such as meditation. We're not designed to naturally be amazing at meditation straight away. So it is kind of reminding yourself as you go onto TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever your platform of choice is, that why am I on here and what is my intention in using it? And just asking yourself those questions will bring you consciously into using them. And so naturally you'll then go, well, actually, I don't need to be on here right now. I'll put it down. Actually, I've got other things I need to do. I'll put it down. Or sometimes going, actually, I just want 10 minutes to sit and scroll and, lose myself for 10 minutes. And then I'm going to get back to whatever else it is I need to be doing. So conscious use is asking yourself, why am I doing this? And then also putting steps in place to make sure you don't slip into the unconscious. So because the platforms themselves don't have any friction points at the moment that stop us from using them, setting those friction points up yourself, such as if you decide, I'm just going to have 10 minutes scrolling on TikTok, set a timer for 10 minutes. And when that timer goes off, you stop scrolling, you put down your phone, you get on with what you're meant to be doing. Or it could be that you set up things like screen time limits on your phone. So my phone has 20 minutes a day screen time limit for social media, which means that when I hit that 20 minutes, it pops up on the screen, you've hit your limit for today. I can override it, but it still has that friction point of reminding me you've already been on social media for 20 minutes today, which I've worked out is more than enough for me to be able to market my business. And anything beyond that is me just using it unconsciously. So I think it's putting your own friction points in place, such as using timers or screen time limits to stop you slipping into the unconscious use and losing hours and hours to the scroll.
And of course, we are all work in progress. I'm curious, I've got to ask, do you ever hit that override button now and again when you're midway through?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes, to be fair, it is mainly due to work reasons. So, for example, this morning I did an Instagram live with someone discussing digital wellbeing, and that Instagram live was half an hour. So I had to override, obviously, for work purposes. And other days I'll decide, right, I'm going to do some, filming of some reels or TikTok videos today. And so that might take me more. So of course, there are definitely days that for business purposes, I have to override it, but I very rarely override it for just the purpose of, for no purpose, I guess. So it's very rare that I override it just to carry on being unconsciously using it.
And we should also highlight in many areas of social media, it promotes a highlight reel that runs the risk of convincing everyone that everyone is living their best life. Absolutely. And our life is dull by comparison, but nobody posts the bad stuff. So I'm curious, what are some of the most common signs that someone might be experiencing negative impacts from their digital devices? Are there any early warning signs we should be looking out for that might set off that light bulb moment in somebody listening?
Yeah, so it's things like finding your phone in your hand mid-conversation with someone who's in the room with you. That's usually a sign, that the addiction's really strong. If you're already chatting away to someone, but you find that you're reaching for your phone at the same time and you're struggling to be present in the moment, I think that's a really strong indicator. So if, for example, you're out for dinner with friends and you're reaching for your phone to check on what's happening in the social media world, rather than just being able to enjoy yourself for those few hours without actually looking at it. So that's definitely a big indicator. If you also find yourself going, oh my God, where have the last 2 hours gone? I've just wasted them on TikTok, Instagram, whichever platform. That's, if you start finding yourself telling yourself that more and more, the question to ask yourself is, why am I being drawn towards this? And often the reason is that, you've come to a level of addiction. And then also just little warning signs. So, for example, I often say to people, why don't you have a day off? Why don't you take some days off social media? And that a lot of people will say, I couldn't do that. And I think that reality is then that there is a level of addiction there if you can't take a day without looking at it. So I think, looking in yourself and thinking, actually, am I getting anything positive from this, or am I drawn into it more than I would like? Spending hours and hours on it, and then looking at other kind of negative impacts. Has it impacted? Am I feeling happy and fulfilled in life, or am I feeling drained? Has there been a negative impact on my mental health? Is my sleep being affected? Have my relationships with people been impacted? Am I ignoring my family, my spouse, my friends in favor of it? So, very similar to any other addiction, really. As with any addiction, we're always looking for the next hit. And if you are struggling while having a break from it, like I said, being out with friends for dinner or sat chatting to your partner at night, and you're thinking, I just want to pick up my phone and look, that's obviously a big indicator that you are addicted.
And I was embarrassingly nodding in agreement with much of what you were saying there, and TikTok in particular. can suck an hour of my day. And if anyone was to ask me at the end of that hour, Neil, what did you learn from that hour? What did you see? I probably wouldn't be able to tell you hardly anything. I was in some kind of zombie-like state. So what practical steps can people take to regain control over their digital lives and reduce that negative impact of technology, increase their productivity and overall well-being?
Yeah. So firstly, remove any from your smartphone that you don't need to have on your smartphone. So, for example, TikTok is a very mobile-led platform. So, of course, that's highly likely you'll want to keep that on there. But, do you need Facebook? Do you need Twitter? Do you need LinkedIn? Things that you could maybe log into a desktop and then be able to log out and leave them behind. So look at which apps you have on your phone and which ones you can remove. Because if you remove them from your phone, you will drastically decrease your use simply by it not following you everywhere you go with your mobile device. As well, set it so you have no notifications coming through. So if you are alerted every time someone's liked one of your posts, or if you've got notifications set up for certain users that when they share new content, it alerts you, or anything really, again, it's part of their driver to make sure that they're pulling you back into the app all the time. And I haven't had notifications on for quite a few years now. And still, they will say to me, they'll pop up now and again, turn on notifications, you're missing out on things, turn on notifications. It's trying to push me into it. So I would definitely turn off all notifications, preferably from most things, to be honest, not just social media, but from most things. We don't need to be alerted as soon as it happens. And that really helps too. As I mentioned earlier, setting those screen time limits as well is a really important one, so that you are aware how long you're spending on there, you are limiting that, and it may take some practice. I think it's worth looking at your screen time. And if, for example, you can see you're currently spending 2 hours a day on TikTok, don't try and reduce that down to 10 minutes, because that's a drastic change. You might start by going, okay, I'm going to limit my time now to an hour and a half for a couple of weeks, and then down to an hour, and sort of do it incrementally, so that actually it becomes an easier step rather than it's a bit like the drastic diet we all go on in January, isn't it? After Christmas, it doesn't last, because we can't just live off lettuce leaves forever, because we go too drastic and we miss out on all the things that our brains and bodies are used to. So taking small steps to reduce your use definitely really, really helps. And then unfollowing as well. If you see anything that you think, no, that's not anything I actually want to be seeing, or that's not fulfilling me in any way or bringing joy to my life, either unfollow, or if it's being presented to you by the computer, a suggested piece of content, there is actually the option to tell them, I don't want to see content like this. So be in control again of what you're doing, rather than let it be in control of you.
It's such a good point about notifications there, because just like a fruit machine, those notifications just bombard us 24/7, even when we should be going to sleep. And on that topic there, how important is sleep in the context of digital well-being, and what are some ways people can ensure they maintain healthy sleep patterns while staying connected to the digital world? Because I suspect for most people listening, their phone is also their alarm clock. It's charging by their bedside overnight, and that temptation is there at all times. Any tips around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sleep has definitely been negatively impacted by the digital world. And I was listening to something the other day, actually, that said the average sleep is now somewhere around 6 hours and 30 minutes. And that's the average. So that means there's a lot of people having a lot less sleep than that. And of course, as humans, our need for around 8 hours on average hasn't changed, but we are getting less sleep. So there are several factors with this. You're absolutely right. So many people now use their phone as an alarm. Of course, alarm clocks still do exist, so we can just actually buy an alarm clock and not have our phones next to us in bed. But one thing I found that's really helped me actually is I still do have my phone in my bedroom, but I don't have it next to me in bed. I have it the other side of the room. That means that when I get in bed, I can't scroll on my phone and lose sleep time by, scrolling and losing time that way. But also in the morning, I don't lie in bed and think, I'll just scroll on my phone. I have to actually physically get up and turn off my alarm, and then I'm up and active anyway and just cracking on with my day. So yeah, having your phone somewhere that's not next to you, either the other side of your bedroom or even, an alternative room, absolutely will improve your sleep, because there are multiple factors around this. There is the fact that, people will get in bed and go, I'll just have one last scroll, and that last scroll could take an hour or two. There's then the fact that we're getting into bed in a dark environment, but we're lighting up our phone in front of our face and essentially telling our brains it's time to wake up rather than it's time to go to sleep. And then the final factor is that we are filling our brains full of content. And, if you think about TikTok, for example, if you scrolled for half an hour in bed on TikTok before you go to sleep, how many videos will your brain have consumed in that time? And then you expect it to just suddenly go into switch off mode instantly as soon as you put your phone down. It doesn't happen. So even if we're exhausted and we kind of pass out asleep, we tend to then wake up in the night with our brains going into overdrive, trying to compute everything it's absorbed just before you've gone to sleep. So yeah, it's a huge impact on sleep, and certainly keeping your phone out of the bedroom or certainly away from your bed helps, and possibly setting up again screen time limits where you deny any access to social media or any apps that you're typical to scroll on. Deny them from, say, an hour before bedtime to an hour after your usual wake-up time. So you've got that time without being plugged in.
And we spoke a few moments ago about the risks associated with endlessly scrolling down highlight reels of everyone's best bits. And mental health is a significant concern for many people in today's fast-paced, digitally connected world. So is there any other guidance on how to maintain mental health while navigating the digital landscape? Because, again, that threat is very real and it can sink in when you least expect it, when you are just endlessly scrolling. I don't know, you could be looking after a child all day and CBeebies, etc., whatever, looking at everybody else living their best life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's one of the worst things, isn't it? I remember, and this was a massive factor for me in my mental health during the pandemic, actually, because I would scroll and see other businesses, saying, oh, well, this pandemic hasn't impacted my business negatively at all. In fact, it's bigger and better than ever. I've pivoted. Everything's online now. I'm running training all day online. And all I could think was, that's not fair. I can't do that. I've got 3 young children at home. And that really, really negatively impacted my mental health, making that kind of comparison of my situation to other people's situation. And of course, that does carry on. Everyone's the same. We all share our best lives online. It's very rare that we go on and share the worst of times or just the reality of real life. So I think it's really important, first of all, to remind ourselves that what we're seeing online might, first of all, not even be true, because there's nothing stopping people actually lying on there. But secondly, as well, that it is just a very small snapshot of their lives. It's not the full picture of their lives. So having that, again, it's back to conscious use, really. So having that consciousness that what you're seeing now is a fantasy show reel. It's not real life. And looking at it that way really helps to manage your own expectations too. And I mentioned it earlier, unfollowing accounts that leave you feeling negative in any way, telling the algorithm that you don't want to see certain content. If I don't want to see 20-year-old women with abs on the beach in their bikini looking stunning, I can tell the algorithm that I don't want to compare myself to them at all. So, I can tell the algorithm not to show me content like that. So make sure that you become in control of it. And then I definitely would recommend regular detoxes as well, particularly if you're finding you are getting to a point where, you're suffering from low mental health. I think taking time away from social media does really help with this. There is some argument that social media keeps us plugged in, but if you're not feeling the joy from being plugged in, if it's not filling you up, if you're not spending half an hour on a social media platform, putting it down and going, amazing, I just feel so much happier now, then there's a big indicator there that it's time to take a break from it. And like I said, when I took a month off, it really, really helped me. And now I do take regular breaks away from social media. Whenever I'm on holiday, I just won't post or be present at all, and I'll delete the apps from my phone. And then often at the weekend too, I will just take some time away from it. But certainly if I got to a point where I thought, this is going back to where it was in the pandemic, I would do exactly the same again. I would take a whole month off with no questions asked, because I think protecting our mental health is so important. And while we fear we might be missing out on stuff on our phones, the reality is that it's probably not fulfilling us in any way anyway.
And I often say on this podcast that we're almost losing the art of daydreaming, because nobody sits in their armchair letting their mind just wander, gaze out of the window on a train, and many can't even visit the toilet without a cheeky scroll. And you know who you are, who you're listening. So really, for me, that means that the only time you'll ever step away from the phone, or many people step away from the phone, is when they're in the shower. And obviously that's when those crazy little ideas come in and creativity flourishes. So do you think creativity is often stifled by that constant barrage of information and and distractions from digital devices? And if you do, how can we reclaim our creativity while still being active participants in all these social channels that we have?
Yeah, oh gosh, absolutely. I mean, there are several studies that have looked into this and the impact on smartphone use and the digital world on creativity, and that's shown exactly that. There's a really severe decline in creativity because we don't give ourselves time to just compute and create and think and pause. And as you say, so many people say, I get my best ideas in the shower. I wonder if they ever think, why is that? Why is it the shower that gives me my ideas? And as you say, it's because we can't do anything in that shower apart from be stood there and washing ourselves. We haven't got the opportunity to be consuming content at the same time. Although some people do, don't they? Some people have shower radios, so they never even allow that switch off time. But yeah, it is so true. And actually, I had realised when I read into this, I'd realised I was one of those people who was plugged in near enough all the time. And for example, I saw my half-hour dog walk every day as an opportunity to listen to a podcast. It came to me then that actually what I was missing out on was that half opportunity to just be quiet, to be outdoors, to be on my own, just me and the dog, and to do nothing, to consume nothing mentally, other than how beautiful they are, the daffodils are growing, or how nice it is to hear the bird song or to feel the wind in your face, And actually it was on a dog walk that I started to think this is something that I could do. Digital wellbeing is something I could do. And it's because I'd given myself time to think. So I think that's really important. Look at the points in your day that you could be giving yourself time to not be plugged in. So that could be that if you've got a dog, for example, that could be your daily dog walk. It could be if you do any form of exercise, it could be while you're exercising. So you're not, again, plugged into a podcast or anything like that. You're not consuming at the same time. You're just doing your exercising. It could be that, you actually make a cup of coffee and just sit with that cup of coffee and do nothing but drink it until that coffee's gone. And then also looking at other well-being exercises that are promoted all the time for this reason, this kind of switch off time. So things like meditation, for example, even if it's just for 10 minutes a day, just having that switch off time for 10 minutes can be really, really valuable. Or journaling. So writing out all your thoughts and getting them into free flow can be great for raising that creativity as well. But yeah, I think that's probably the key thing. Look for those moments in your day where you don't need to be plugged in, and don't plug in, make sure you take the conscious effort to not plug in those times.
And you did mention at the beginning of our conversation that you limit your social media usage with an app or something there. So are there any resources or tools that you can recommend for anyone listening that wanting to improve their digital well-being and develop that healthier relationship with technology?
Yeah, definitely. There are lots out there, actually, and they seem to be increasing, and there seems to be more and more of them all the time, which is great because that shows that people are thinking about this more. So yeah, on smartphones, they all have some form of limits that you can set up of screen time limits. So on iPhone, it's called screen time. So it's simply what it says. On Android, they actually call it digital well-being. So they've acknowledged that is actually what it is improving, is the digital well-being. There is also an app that I really like called Forest. It's a paid app. I think it was, off the top of my head, I think I paid about £3.50 for it. So it's not extortionate.
Yeah.
But what Forest does is you go into Forest and you essentially plant a tree. And if you leave the app, the tree withers and dies. You can either do it on a timer. So you could say, right, I want 90 minutes where the app is open. And if I go off the app in that time, as in I go onto a different app, then my tree will wither and die. Or you just set it running and your tree keeps growing to the point where you then leave the app. And that to me isn't the best bit, because I'm not really into kind of gamification. I'm not too bothered if I'm growing virtual trees. But what I really like about Forest is they also give you coins, virtual coins, as you grow your tree. And you can actually transfer those virtual coins when you get to 2,500 of them. They've partnered with a charity who will then actually plant a physical tree. So what is amazing is you can be, by not using your phone, by turning on Forest and leaving that running, you can actually then help the planet as well, because you can plant actual trees. So I really, really like that. There is also an app called OneSec. So what OneSec does is when you go to open social media, it does a pause, and it's back to kind of adding in that friction. So it's not just a case of going, I can jump from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook. It actually pauses as you open the app and adds that friction in place that's long enough to maybe come into consciousness and go, oh, actually, no, I don't want to go on that app right now. So that's another really good tool that you can use too.
Wow, some great suggestions. I'll be checking those out. And for anyone listening, because I think you've been amazing today and so many great insights, for anyone listening that would like to find you online or maybe work with you or just strike up a conversation, what's the best starting point for everything?
You can come and find me on social media, ironically. I still use it. It's still a great business tool for me. So Instagram's probably one of the best places to come and chat to me. I'm Sam Flynn SM on Instagram. And I also have a YouTube channel where I share at least one video a week that gives you some insight into digital well-being, digital culture within businesses, being a good digital role model as a parent, and all sorts of things around managing our relationship with the digital world. So if you search for @SamFlynnDigital on YouTube, then you will be able to find all my videos as well. And I do have a short course that helps people reduce their digital use, and that can be found at reduceyourphoneuse.com.
Awesome. Well, I'll add all those links to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. So much I love chatting with you about today, because we've all have smartphones, and the smartphones and the digital world offer us all opportunities like we've never seen before, but they can also impact us negatively. And a few things you mentioned there, anyone listening that's suffering things with lack of focus or attention, feel like they don't have enough time, lack of sleep, mental health issues, or creativity blocks, etc. So much more we can do around that by simply using our devices consciously and putting a few steps in place to reduce those negative impacts. Love chatting with you today, Sam. I'd love to get you back on later in the year, maybe around about December time, where people are thinking about making those big changes in January.
But good. Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Well, just thank you for sharing your story with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that's it for today's episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Sam Flynn, the digital wellbeing coach, as much as I did. I must admit, I was nodding nervously throughout, ticking all the things she said we shouldn't be doing off my list here, because I do them all. I'm not going to be preaching to anybody, but I am hopeful that I can take a few things on board of what Sam said there and get a little bit of time back, and also boost my creativity a little more. But ultimately, for me, it was all about using technology more mindfully and reducing the negative impact so we can enjoy the more positive aspects to it too. But if you found today's episode helpful, please be sure to share it with your friends and colleagues who might benefit from some of the advice shared here. And we all know somebody that takes their phone to the toilet with them. I'm not going to tell you if it was me or not. So please, and if you've got any other suggestions or any insights you can add to today's conversation, email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast app if you would like to hear more stories like this. And please remember to leave a rating and review if you do have chance. It really does help the podcast and the ongoing battle against algorithms. But more than anything, just thank you for tuning in. And until next time, don't be a stranger.